अभी तो 20 के चल रहा है, अभी 30 के चलाएंगे। बकरे इसके बाद अभी तो और 5,000 होने दो आटा, अभी तो 4,000।
Tayo. Kina? Ano udah?
Hey, कैसा?
Kinanda? Suara ke sana kamera gitu. Nah, ini kan sudah hasil juga. Wow. Kartu kamu lagi nih?
Nah lagi. Wah, ya aja.
Smile dah.
नहीं तो
바닐라 청소기를 바닐라 밀죠. 담아줘.
Omdat het vluchtelingenprobleem alleen maar groter wordt. Het is een groot drama voor mensen. Als je de beelden ziet op televisie en met name nu van uit Oekraïne. Verschrikkelijk. Dus ik wil graag een daad stellen om daar misschien wat aan te doen. Al is het maar een klein beetje, elke druppel op een gloeiende plaat die helpt.
Ja, ik kan niet blijven zitten in de wetenschap dat er 100 miljoen mensen op de vlucht zijn. Dus als ik daaraan denk, aan dat getal, dat vind ik zo niet te bevatten. Ik denk, als dit één klein dingetje is wat wij vanuit onze veilige positie hier kunnen doen, dan doen we dat. Ik denk dat het of 14, 15.
eerder gedaan of is het eerste?
Ja, nee, ik heb dit is mijn 5e keer, denk ik. Ja.
Nee, het was heel lekker. Ja, het heeft geregend, maar voor de rest was het een mooie route. Ik denk dat ik zo rond de 2500 euro zit, maar ik weet het niet precies. Maar het was leuk en het was een mooie route. We zijn er weer.
Best wel een eind, maar ik ben blij dat ik er ben. Een mooi doel voor de vluchtelingen. En ja, we houden van wandelen. En s'nachts is een extra dimensie, hè, wandelen s'nachts. Deze wandeling? Nee. Nee, nog nooit. Ja, zo'n donker beginnen en dan wordt het licht en een hele mooie route. Dus ik vond het mooi om te doen. Ja, leuk.
Zo. Oh, hier staat een ennetje.
Maar die shit was op rood nog gepakt.
Kapot? Ja, maar dat kan niet. Wat staat?
Oh, jongens.
Ik heb iets leuks voor jullie. Kom.
Het is meer dan 40.
Ja. Oh, ben je omgelopen? Nee. Was het maar waar? Gabi! Did it! Goed gedaan! Top! Ja. Ik ga met u meelopen. De laatste 40 metertjes. Fantastisch! Meters. Nog 40. Verder. Maar het wordt beloond. Fantastisch. De laatste meters!
تهجرنا 6 سنين بتركيا. 6 سنين كل يوم نجي نقف على السكة نتفرج على الأبيض نتحسر عليها.
هي السكة قريبة من
المدينة؟ ايه قريب على الحدود. يعني مع الفاصل بين المدينة وبين تركيا والمدينة السكة. تهجرنا 6 سنين. تضررنا طبعا من التهجير احنا. عندنا 150 دونم قاع. ال 150 دونم قاع 6 سنين ما زرعناها خالص، يعني مو مهجرين احنا. في عندنا آليات للزراعة انباعا كليات، بيشي راح منه. اثناء عمليتنا بعد السلام، اول دخولنا بعد السلام اول يوم دخلنا تل ابيض والحمد لله. يعني انا تزوجت بتركيا قبل ما ندخل عمليتنا بعد السلام يعني بشي سنه. اثناء دخولنا بعد السلام دخلنا احنا والحمد لله توظفت وفرص يعني علاقه الشباب اللي توظفوا. يعني مثلا انا حاليا متوظف بالمجلس المحلي، مدير الكازيه والمصفايه بعد السلام. إيه الحمد لله موجود الامن والامان. يعني
مين هو المهدد الوحيد لهذا الامن والامان بتل ابيض؟
اللي مهدد الامن الوحيد هو حزب البككه. يعني من فتره ضرب صواريخ على تل ابيض وراح عن ضحايا، يعني 3 ضحايا راحوا شهداء واكثر من شيء 7 8 جرحى.
حاليا بالنسبة للأرزاق الشخصية الحمد لله نملك أكثر من 100 دونم أراضي قابلة للزراعة أما للقمح أو مادة القطن، بالإضافة للدور المدني حيث نشارك الأهالي. تعاونت مع الجهات المعنية موجودة بالبلد بحيث أنه أشاركهم كاختصاص بمجالي بالمجال الميديا. كنا دائما انا والشباب اصدقائنا انه نجلس على الحدود نشوف بيوتنا اللي ما تبعد اكثر من 2 كيلومتر، وتصير هالشيء هذا مثل حسرة بقلوبنا انه ما نقدر نوصلها. بعد العملية الحمد لله تم هالشيء هذا، وحاليا شغالين على إعادة هيكلة البنى التحتية اللي موجودة بالبلد على حسب الخبرات اللي نحن نعطيها ضمن مجالنا.
تهجرت عام 2014 على أيام الدواعشة، أول ما دخلوا الدواعشة. رحت بعد ما درست، يعني بعد ما أخذت التاسع بسوريا رحت على تركيا بال 2014 كمل دراستي هناك. بلشت بالعاشر 11 بكالوريا. بعد ما أخذت شهادة البكالوريا بتركيا درست سنة لغة طبعا، وبعدها انقبلت بجامعة سرت. درست معهد فني مخبري 2 سنين. طبعا ضمن الفترة هاي أخذت الجنسية التركية، حصلت على الجنسية التركية وتخرجت. بعد التخرج تقريبا فترة قصيرة صحت لي فرصة أني أرجع لبلدي ورجعت. رغم كل الأيام اللي عشتها بتركيا كان تفكيري أني أرجع لبلدي بالنهاية، يعني دراستي كذا بعد ما أخلص، بعد كل مخيلتي وتفكيري هي بلدي. يعني بالنهاية راح أرجع لبلدي، وهاي رجعت الحمد لله.
حد جبرك على الرجعة؟ ليش رجعت؟
لا أنا بإرادتي الحرة رجعت والله، لأنه الواحد بلده يعني ما دارش ما راح بلده بالنهاية. حاليا موظف بالمشفى الحمد لله، والأوضاع ماشي الحال، عم نساهم إنه بازدهار هذا البلد. والبلد الحمد لله يعني كل يوم عم يصير شيء جديد، كل يوم عم يصير عمار جديد، كل يوم عم يصير يعني مثل مثل النحلة. يعني الحمد لله الوضع ممتاز، بس المشكلة الوحيدة هي قصف بككة. يعني الخوف صفى، بس انه قصف بككة، اما باقي ما تبقى الوضع ممتاز بالبلد.
يعني تتمنى تحرر مناطق ثانية المهجرين مثلك يرجعوا لبلادهم مرة ثانية؟
اكيد والله، يا ريت يعني، يا ريت كل سوريا يصير وضعها مثل منطقة تل أبيض، يعني مثل منطقة نبع السلام بشكل عام، لأنه الوضع الحمد لله ممتاز، ويعني فرق كبير يعني صار اليوم يعني أكثر من سنتين محررة المنطقة. يعني الوضع ممتاز، كل يوم أعمار جديد، كل يوم شيء جديد، كل يوم يعني الحمد لله.
مبسوط؟
كثير مبسوط.
There is dialogue between communities. So it's important that we can contribute to that, always talk about the rights that refugees have, but they also have obligations like any citizen, but also
warm enough, they might not feel to build a new life in the countries that...
Being a refugee is a very big challenge. You have left your country because you were forced to leave it, either because of conflict, persecution, war. It was not a decision that you could easily make. You were forced to flee because of the safety, your own safety, the safety of your family, of your children. And it's always a very difficult moment for people becoming refugees. And it's also very difficult for people to flee their countries in time of persecution, violence, war. And many countries are actually preventing this to happen. So people do not become refugees, and they have to go and face war, conflict, persecution. At the same time, what I want to say today is that we have reached the 100 million mark of persons who have been displaced, either because of conflict, persecution, violence, either in their country, people who are displaced inside their country, or those who manage to cross a border and become refugees. And sadly, we have to state this year that the number of refugees and internally displaced persons has never been as high since we have been recording their numbers, which is a very negative development, because it means that the international community, the security collective system, is not enabling wars to be prevented, conflict to happen, persecution to take place, and it forces people to leave their countries with their families when they can and seek safety. So it's very important to ensure that this possibility of seeking safety, seeking protection, is enabled for all the people who need to flee their countries of origin. Having worked now for more than 30 years with refugees, the most important thing for a person who has to flee violence, persecution, war, is the ability to flee the situation that they face. So the most important is to ensure that the countries neighboring and possibly sometimes further away give the possibility of safety to people who have no other choice than leaving their country, because otherwise they would be put in detention, they may be harmed, they may be killed. So the first thing, which is the most important, and that we see in peril today in many regions of the world, is the possibility to ask and seek protection. So we thought this year it was very important to remind states, the public in general, how important it is for a person to be able to seek that protection so that they can protect their lives and to protect their children and their family members. So in this time of peril, where many states are erecting walls, are rejecting people, are sending people back to danger, it is very important for the UNHCR, the High Commissioner for Refugees, which is there to protect and remind states to protect refugees and find durable solutions for them, to insist on seeking safety. The international community, states, to do is to work on peace so that the conditions in these countries enable people to go back to these countries, to stop the conflict. To a certain extent in Afghanistan the conflict has stopped, but the conditions of living and the starvation that Afghans are confronted to, the still security risks that they are facing make it difficult for them to remain in their country or to return to their country. In Syria, the conflict has not resolved and many parts of the country are subject to conflict. No political or security improvements have taken place, and the situation actually, the social and economic situation for Syrians living in Syria is deteriorating every day. So we need in these two countries peace to come and conditions enabling people to return to develop. This is the basic things that we are asking states to work on, as well as in Ukraine, where the Russian Federation and Ukraine should find ways to find peace so that people do not need to escape within the country or outside the country. So peace and the conditions for people to return safely and in dignity is the solution for the refugee situation to cease. When you have up to 6 million people who have left Ukraine to the neighboring countries, when you have a similar number, even not higher, people who are displaced within Ukraine, it tells you on a total population, I think of a little bit more than 40 million, that the whole population is affected by the situation of war. So the first thing is, of course, the people themselves are hurt by the war, as one can imagine. And then it is very important that they are able to reach safety outside as also of their country. And this is what we have seen, is that European countries who often have been seen as closing their borders, like in many countries in the world, when faced with neighbors experiencing war, they have to deal with the high influx of people coming to their countries. So what we see today in the last 3 months, since 24th February, in Poland, in Slovakia, in Romania, in Moldova, in the Slovak Republic, is that as neighbors to a conflict, as Turkey has been a neighboring to Syria, people go and flee to the neighboring countries. This is what we see all over the world. And this time we see it in the industrialized part of the world, in Europe, but there is no difference. The first countries who are hosting refugees are usually the neighboring countries. Pakistan, Iran, and the Central Asian republics neighboring Afghanistan have been hosting Afghan refugees for more than 40 years. Again, the neighboring countries of Syria are the ones hosting the large number of Syrians. Jordan, Lebanon, Iraq, and Turkey. So today, it is not a surprise to see that the neighboring countries are facing this influx. So what we ask as UNHCR is that responsibility sharing is the response, because these countries, the neighboring countries, cannot face alone such a massive influx, and they need to be supported both financially as well as through other means that UNHCR usually promotes, which is resettlement, so that persons, in particular the ones who are the most vulnerable, can benefit from the support from the entire international community. So what this crisis shows again is that it is very important to support the neighboring countries. And today, in the recent times, it is in Europe. We had seen it when the former Yugoslavia dissolved. There were some movements. We have seen some movements in 2015, 2016, when people, mostly Syrians, also came to Europe, but recently, usually, it's in other parts of the world that we have seen the major number of refugees. So Europe has also to cope with this situation and we should assist them to cope so that the majority actually of the people fleeing today Ukraine are women and children, because as there is a war, men are fighting. So the people that we see arriving are often particularly vulnerable. They can be also subject to trafficking, to very different situations, because these risks exist, and it's very important to ensure that the vulnerable people are supported in the best way possible. We ask, and the head of all UN agencies operating in Syria are asking member states, in particular the permanent member, 5 permanent member states of the Security Council, to adopt this resolution, because the cross-line support that can be provided within Syria, even though it needs to be further developed, cannot support the 4.2 million people that are supported through these activities. And more than 3,200,000 of the people living there depend exclusively on humanitarian assistance. And among them, there are more than 2.2 internally displaced persons in that region. So this region needs heavy support so that the lives of the children, women and men who are living there can still continue to be fed and supported by the cross-border resolution. So we ask all states to take their responsibility and to make sure that this humanitarian aid continues, and we ask it with the strongest and the most dramatic voice we can voice. Turkey has showed the way to so many other countries in the world with responsibility and solidarity. And right now, the conditions in Syria remain so difficult for any family to consider raising their children there when they have the solidarity and responsibility of the state to live and continue living in the best way possible to raise their children. So it's very important to celebrate the countries who are showing the way. And Turkey has been showing the way for a long time. Too long time for many, but as long as the situation remains so difficult in Syria, we count on Turkey to support the refugees in Turkey, and we count on other countries to support Turkey in hosting these refugees through resettlement and also through additional financial aid, which is important to be provided to Turkey.